We should be rocking and rolling here in short order on the YouTube broadcast. It'll take just a second for it to fire up and get ready to go. All right, there we are. All right, so we are back online. Let me make certain that I inform everybody once again at the home office here that we are back going here. So you guys give me just a sec. All right. I trust you all had a nice, scrumptious lunch break. I certainly did. All right. Send that email off, and now we're ready to rock and roll. All right. We are going to jump right back in and go with our next module for the afternoon here. Now, I want to encourage you guys there. Well done on your exams there, and make sure that on every one of those things on those quizzes, repeat them just like you guys are doing there. Some of you, you've done that on your own, and that repetition is indeed the trick, no doubt about it. So make sure that you are doing that, because every time you do it again, you get better at it. Okay. And it's the repetition of those things, like I said several times before, that really drives that information home and embeds it in your long-term memory. So you guys be sure to do that. Okay. Now we are going to get us some lab time later on this afternoon. I want to go ahead and start in on this next module. There are very specific types of attacks, specialized attacks, they call them here, that we can prep for in setting up our penetration testing environment here. And there are very specific tool suites that we utilize and approaches, as it were, in order to set these things up. Now, I have mentioned the whole concept of social engineering a couple of times. We'll delve on into some more details on that a little bit later on here. First, let's take a look at your wireless access point attacks. Now, I gave you guys the access to the Aircrack NG product line here a couple of days ago. That is an entire suite of products that are fine-tuned towards hacking, cracking, and attacking wireless access points. WAP, we call those. Um, I'm constantly amazed and amused, I guess is the best way to put it, at people that will, and I'm talking about in enterprise organizations here, not just in personal home networks, but in large, I've seen large enterprises do this. They'll take the wireless access points out of, unpack them from whomever the vendor or the manufacturer they purchase those things from, and they'll take them, put them up, put them in place. Don't do any hardening on the device. They leave the default user ID, password, credentials for the administrator, management console in place on those things. And I have actually had network engineers tell me before that they would prefer the wireless world rather than wired network connections, but because they considered the wireless access points and systems much more secure than the wireless ones. Well, then I would pull out my mobile phone or my tablet and basically show them where they were so far off base it wasn't even funny. I told you guys a couple of days ago, up until very recently in my neighborhood here in my network, I found there were two users, one in my cul-de-sac and one in an adjacent cul-de-sac, that had no security whatsoever set up on their wireless access points. And anybody could just park out in front of their home, tap into their signal, take full control of their network, and have access to each and every device and all the information that's flowing on those devices through their Wi-Fi, their system there. That whole concept of snooping and prying on other people's wireless access points is called wire walking or wire surfing or war driving, war walking. And that's just, using even a mobile phone to actually figure out what the SSID is, the service set identifier, whether it is secure or not. And if it's not secure, just jump on that bad boy, take complete control of it. Okay. I gave you guys the links to the routerpasswords.com website earlier. That's where all of the user IDs and passwords for the management consoles for all of your router type devices, including the router gateway appliances, the wireless access points, are published online, right online. The default IP addresses of those are published right online. Okay. So routerpasswords.com IP address, there's several sites out there that publish what those are. For we penetration testers, that's gold mining right there I'm talking about. So, just think about being able to just walk past a building, take control of their wireless access points inside, and then have access to every bit of information flowing across those links between those systems and anybody's endpoint computers, laptops, mobile phones, etc. There are a whole host of wireless attacks and a whole host of tools that are utilized to set up and initiate and carry through on these wireless attacks as well. One of the attacks is you set up your own Wi-Fi appliance. We call it a rogue appliance, but even the naming conventions of those things are oftentimes used to set up what we call evil twins. I'll give you an example here. Say I have a network environment set up to where I am snooping on some systems, and I find an SSID, a wireless access point, and the name of that device is WAP123. Okay. So I'll set up my own wireless access point. They call it a rogue device, but I'm going to even further name it where it would be referred to as an evil twin. Okay. So I'm going to name my device WAPL23. 23. Now, if you're looking at the service set identifiers on your small little display on a laptop computer system, and you see the names of those devices, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between those two. Okay. Now, that's called an evil twin, where I'll set up that rogue appliance there. So I'll follow that up with, for instance, a visit to our old trusty Amazon.com. And let me show you what I would do there. I would purchase me on Amazon.com. Okay. You're going to be amazed at the price on this. Let's look at a Wi-Fi jammer. Look at that. Wi-Fi jammer, frequency jammer. Okay. Look at the price on these things. Okay. I can get a full-fledged Wi-Fi jammer type of device. I see many of them they've already taken offline there. I guess they don't want people buying them, right? I can get a 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi jammer for less than $100, and I can have it drop shipped to my front doorstep this afternoon, right? So, you set up a bogus Wi-Fi access point. You can set it up with a laptop computer or just buy you a Wi-Fi access point, wireless access point. Name it with that evil twin naming convention there. Jam the legitimate device, and then forcing people to log in through your appliance. Well, it's another one of those twofers. When they go to log into your device, they give you the credentials for the legitimate device, and you just let them log in with whatever you want to into your appliance. And now they think they're talking with a secure connection, but they're giving you all kinds of information by just logging in through your device. Okay. So now if I then compound to that, if I'm logging in and taking control of a Wi-Fi appliance in some large enterprise, well, I can use those very clever data packet, data frame crafting tools like I found in the Aircrack NG product line I gave you guys the links to. And so I can then infect systems on the back side of the wireless access point, and then plant my malware, plant my flags, gain access to those that unauthorized access to internal host machines. Well, then I've just established my pivot point. I am now compromised that host. That I take my logical look around, um, and crack that stuff open and move from one host to another host to another host to another host. Okay. Now, another thing that I can do, and I also have the capability of doing this with some of the tools I've already given you links to, specifically the Aircrack NG product line. I can craft what is referred to as a disconnect or a deauthentication communication frame. Yeah, and I know you guys have seen this before. When you connect to, for instance, public networks, aircraft or airport networks, coffee shop networks, things like that, hotel networks. When you go to disconnect from those, oftentimes your system will receive the little pop-up box asking you, well, do you want to forget this connection? That is called a deactivation or a deauthentication packet, and I can send it in the other direction as well. If I monitor traffic that's flowing between a WAP, a wireless access point, and multiple clients inside of an organization, I can pick up their MAC addresses of those individual client machines. So I then create a script program that first I define these deauthentication or disconnect packet frames, include the MAC address that I want to be forgotten by the WAP, the wireless access point, send those frames up wirelessly, and the WAP says, okay, I'll remove that MAC address from my internal table. So the next time that device wants to attach to the legitimate appliance, they have to provide the credentials once again. So I then will sit aside and monitor that traffic, you see. So I may be able to pick the credentials up in that manner as well. There's also a couple of things on the wireless access points themselves that reveal pretty interesting information there. All of the wireless access points come out of the box, typically configured with what's referred to as WEP, wired equivalent privacy. That actually equates directly to hardly any security at all. There's script programs that you can download in numerous places on the worldwide interweb that can crack that authentication open in a matter of hours. So, and then there's WPA, which is Wi-Fi protected access, WPA version 2, WPA version 3. Now, I'll tell you, if you encounter a wireless access point that is set up, especially with the Wi-Fi protected access version 3 enterprise mode, don't waste your time trying to crack the credentials there. Okay, move on to the next thing on your checklist, because those things use very, very strong encryption algorithms. The only way that you would be able to attack that device is by being able to intercept some traffic, take MAC addresses, deauthenticate, and then force those devices then to try to log into an alternate device, thus giving you the credentials. You're not going to be able to crack the algorithms that are used to encrypt those data with that level of encryption and protection assigned to those things. So, there's certain things that and I'm not saying throw in the towel. I'm saying you got to change tactic altogether if you're going to be attacking those things there as well. Oftentimes, too, there are, like I've seen it in hotel networks specifically, and in like aircraft, airport networks, those kind of things. When you first go to log into it, they have a splash page that they come up with. And, it's basically, if you look under the covers of those, they call it captive portals or splash pages, they lead you to believe anyway that once you validate some information, like what's your room number and what's your last name, then they allow you the access to their internet. But in the fine print, by going through that captive portal, all you're doing is agreeing with the terms that are, it's so small you're hardly able to read those. And most people don't click and read the terms and conditions anyway. But what you're doing there is alleviating them of any responsibility whatsoever if stuff is stolen from your system while you're connected to their network. But they would leave you to believe anyway that you have a secure network connection. And 99% of the time, you simply don't. Okay. The captive portal there is for their benefit, and basically you giving them permission to that are alleviating them from any responsibility of anything that may occur. So those are different types of attacks that I utilize on wireless access points, and a whole host of, like I say, software suites and tools that are used to set up these attacks. Many of the wireless attacks too are launched against Bluetooth devices, mobile phones, and folks don't realize too. For instance, on my setup here, I use a wireless mouse. It communicates with the Bluetooth technology to a dongle that plugs into a USB port. I use a wireless keyboard, same thing, Bluetooth frequencies, 2.4 gigahertz frequencies. But those are frequencies that travel over the air. So the bad guys, and we pen testers as well, can basically sniff and snoop on those signals as well and gather some pretty interesting information, because the majority of those connections are not encrypted at all. It's clear text data flowing back and forth through the airwaves there. There are these guys here, several different tool suites here. I'll give you a link to a couple of these. The Insider tool suite. Here's one that is specific. The tool suite for attacking wireless access points. That's the really good link there. On what the insider attack or insider tool suite's all about. That's a good link there. And then the Kismet tool suite as well. Kismet is a suite of attack, sort of attack, not an entire attack framework, but attack tools there. They're specifically oriented towards attacking Bluetooth types of appliances, wireless keyboards, wireless mouse, that kind of thing. So good tool suites there that allow me to launch those wireless oriented types of attacks. Okay. Here's some other tools. I gave you the link already to the Aircrack NG product line. The Pumpkin, Wi-Fi Pumpkin, another suite of tools, specifically in tuned on wireless type of connectivity. There are several of the tool suites in the wireless arena that are oriented only towards Wi-Fi, your 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and now the new 6 gigahertz mesh type of networks. The Wiggle utility allows me to sort of discover and map out a widespread wireless environment, network environment. It also gives me specific information about individual wireless access points that are in a wireless network segment. And these are all tools that I can utilize not only for doing my discovery and enumeration functions, but also they have lots of source code and scripts in there that allow me the ability of particularly crafting special type of data package frames and payloads to then introduce into wireless communications. And it goes across the gamut as far as different types of wireless communication protocols, including the Bluetooth, of course, 2.4 gigahertz, the Wi-Fi, which is once again 2.4 gig, 5 gig, and 6 gig frequency ranges, the near field communications, NFC, they call that. Now, near field communications, very close proximity, but I can still tap into some of those frequencies and capture exchange information to allow me to do things like clone a mobile phone or clone skim information off of credit cards, tap to pay kind of functionality there as well. Okay. The Aircrack NG product line is probably the most diverse set of tools that are used in the wireless arena. It has tools that were much like Wireshark will allow me to capture data frames right out of thin air, capture those and bring them into my system, do further scrutiny and analysis on those, and pick out things like MAC addresses, so on. So it's a very diverse set of tools there. And then combining tools like Kismet and Insider together often gives you much of the same overall widespread functionality as you singularly have in the Aircrack NG product line. In Aircrack, there's, gosh, I don't know, about 24 different subcomponents or submodules in there that allow you to do all kinds of stuff in the wireless arena. Bluetooth, the Kismet and SpoofTooth is the other tool suite there, particularly oriented towards the Bluetooth frequency range, which is 2.4 gigahertz as well, different than the Wi-Fi, but still in the 2.4 frequency realm there. There are several different types of attacks that I can launch against Bluetooth devices, especially if I can locate people. And boy, there's a bunch of them out there too. This sort of amazes me still. The number of individuals that will turn up their Bluetooth pinging and capabilities on, for instance, their mobile phones or their tablet devices, and even set their Bluetooth appliances up to auto pair so that you don't have to have the pairing codes with things like, with those types of situations. And there's a couple of different very targeted attacks that target Bluetooth types of appliances there. That there's some of the tools, Bluetooth, for instance. There's a tool suite there that interrupts the communication between Bluetooth devices. There's in both Kismet and SpoofTooth. They have frequency scanner types of devices there that can help me pinpoint and locate Bluetooth devices out in the field. Now, as I was saying, for the most part, just like NFC, which is very close, about 9-10 centimeters proximity, Bluetooth devices are typically the range limit on those is about 10 meters, 30 some odd feet, or right at 30 feet. But there is a version of Bluetooth that actually has been regulated in a lot of areas now that it goes almost 100 meters. So the Bluetooth signals can be forced out and used to inundate Bluetooth devices. It's called blue jacking. People tend to think blue jacking is where I take over the attachment and the control of a Bluetooth device. Nope, that's called blue snarfing. Blue jacking is when I just inundate every Bluetooth device in a certain proximity with all of these message requests and all of these pairing requests. Basically it's overwhelming the Bluetooth devices, basically causing a denial of service kind of attack if I wish to. So another thing about Bluetooth is that it is a pairing based protocol by nature, but a lot of people they don't worry about that pairing thing. They just set it up to auto pairing mode. Any Bluetooth device that's in close proximity can attach to the device, and they got access to all of it. That's what I look for if I'm trying to start doing some hacking and attacking in that Bluetooth frequency range there. Okay, talked about the Evil Twin. One of the packages that are specifically valuable in these types of rogue appliance and Evil Twin attacks is this Wi-Fi Pumpkin. That tool suite allows me to locate wireless access points that may be vulnerable and susceptible to being overtaken, especially with the rogue appliance or Evil Twin type of setup there. Okay. So again, just in all of the wireless ranges, there is some method of overwhelming or jamming the signal. Gig the link to Amazon. Less than $100, you can get you a Wi-Fi signal jammer there. And it does a really good job of jamming and making the signals unreachable or unattachable anyway. So, I might get my own Wi-Fi device, give it an Evil Twin kind of name, get me a jammer, target the jammer towards the legitimate signal, thus putting my device in close proximity to the users and having them log in through my device. Okay? So that's a pretty common type of attack that we can set up and launch in the wireless world. And you guys know, I mean, there is so much wireless communication being implemented now. And I'm talking about in networks of every size and shape. Okay. Wi-Fi jammer is a software-based jammer type of device that I can utilize pretty much on any kind of system that can broadcast Wi-Fi signaling. So I can run the software and then key in on specific Wi-Fi signals, and even in specifically on individual channels within the Wi-Fi signaling. Okay. So I can do some pretty interesting things there with those types of devices. Now, here is this pretty interesting method here. They call it fuzzy blasting or protocol fuzzing. It's basically where I just create and then inject these very strange configurations of either TCP tagged data frames or UDP tagged data frames, and then just blow those things towards wireless appliances there. Again, basically to overwhelm them, or um any of those things that are looking out like Bluetooth devices that are in auto pairing mode. Just overwhelm the signaling there with all of these crazy malformed packets that are basically designed to confuse the systems and, in essence, denial of service on those things. Okay. Now, there are also tools that I can utilize specifically in the Wi-Fi world, not so much in Bluetooth, but in the Wi-Fi frequencies there with the wireless access points too. I mentioned SCAPI, that tool earlier, but that allows me to uh, look at and identify vulnerabilities that are inherent in specific Wi-Fi setups. Most people are, well, many network engineers, they do a pretty good job now with hardening the Wi-Fi appliances in network environments, but they only go so far with it. You know, tools like SCAPI and Kismet and a couple of the other tools suites that we've talked about here, Aircrack NG products. They do a really good job of identifying, deep dive identifying vulnerabilities that are mainly through misconfigurations on wireless access points, the WAP devices themselves. And then the other tools in those same suites, Kismet, Aircrack NG, SCAPI, they allow me then to put together and mount certain types of targeted attacks on those particular devices as well. The fuzzing is just one method, one means of doing those types of attacks on the very specific TCP or UDP type of data packets that I put together and blast towards those devices. The Aircrack NG product line is probably in my opinion, the best that I can create these data packets from. Even the data packets that I want to use in that fuzzy probing, that fuzzy testing there as well. The packets that I put together can be very cleverly assembled so that we can do things like I talked about earlier, the firewalking, the Christmas tree attack on firewalls or on intrusion detection systems. All of those things operate primarily by processing a set of what's called ACEs, access control entries, which make up a script or a listing of access control lists, typically processed top to bottom. If I construct the frames in such a way that it does that Christmas tree thing, lights up the firewall or the IDS system, because it just does not understand the sequence of events. According to how the system is set up to basically do a failover, a fail. If the system is set up to fail open, I cause the failure in the system, but then the traffic gets through. It's all according to how the system is configured by the network engineer. And especially with firewalls, very seldom will the network engineers, if the firewall fails, they fail it in a closed state, so nothing gets through. Okay. So more often than not, you'll see, well, if it fails, let it fail open. So if I can cause that Christmas tree light up or that firewalking thing to occur there, then that may sort of open up the front door to all types of malicious traffic that I can then force feed through after the fact. You see, so The using the packet crafting tool suites there, I can accomplish those types of attacks on systems. I also can create these de-authentication data frames and data packets there as well. So, and create the packet to with a MAC address of a device that I want the system to forget. Okay? Force it through there. Yep, I don't know that system anymore. So the next time they want to attach, well, they got to go through the whole, credential evaluation handshake process. Excuse me. And then I will be sitting aside monitoring that traffic and may very well be able to pick up the credentials to log into that particular device there. Yeah. So these captive portals here is what I was talking about. It's users when they first go to like a hotel network is the example I gave you guys there. If you want to access their network connection, well, you're redirected to this captive portal page. Well, if I can jump in front of those and create my own captive portal page, redirect users on the network there, and I can trick them into giving me just about every bit of information I want. And it's the same concept that I talked about earlier when I was using the example of the cross-site request forgery. Monitor the traffic as it's going on between a user and say a website of some sort. I've done my background research. I know what this person's email address is, for instance. And while I see them attached to this publicly available website, especially if they're attaching through a Wi-Fi connection of some sort, well, then I send them that sideline email. Okay. And we notice you're on our website here. Click this link so that we can validate your credentials. Okay. So I might redirect them to my captive portal site that I want them to key their credentials in by just jumping into the Wi-Fi connection or monitoring them and sending the sideline email and get them to validate their credentials. Either way, they end up giving me their credentials and even other information that I may ask for, credit card numbers, debit card numbers, things like that. Okay. So that's the whole concept of the captive portals, and almost all of your public, well, all of them, like the hotels or the airport or the rental car domain, your favorite coffee shop, almost all of them immediately. If you want to go and use their network, you get to their captive page or their splash page to, in essence, sort of, say, yep, I'm a valid user sitting in the hotel right now. Here's my room number. Here's my last name. And then they shoot me on through then to their internet connection. And it really does give me the illusion that the connection is protected when in most cases it simply is not. Okay. Here is this little guy right here, pretty interesting. WPS, Wi-Fi protective setup. You guys have seen it, I know. It is a physical button on the outside of the wireless access point that allows individual wireless appliances or wireless connected appliances to automatically configure to the wireless access point without having to provide credentials. Okay, you fire up the Wi-Fi device, it finds the signal, you press the button on the WAP, it automatically reaches out, grabs all those devices, and automatically attaches them to the system there. Well, that's a security issue, no doubt about it. And if I'm setting up these devices in an enterprise network environment, I'll disable that function. And people say, well, yeah, but you have to have physical access to the device to use that. Yes, you do, but it is amazingly simple to gain that physical access to a wireless access point, and especially in large systems, okay? Because there's so many of them, and there's nobody eyeballing watching those things 24/7, and because of the nature of the beast, those are usually not always placed in a centralized wiring closet or network room. They may be placed all over the place inside the environment. So gaining that physical access to them and pushing that WPS button is a relatively simple thing to do. Okay. Um, there is this little attack method here called pixie dust. It is using this attack method here. It's called bully to launch that offline attack, and that is for any of the Wi-Fi or wireless access point type of devices that that have that auto connect or that pin code requirement connectivity to a wireless access point. Okay. Um, but so it's offline. It's not in line as the devices are attached. You don't physically attach to the device. You just capture information about that attachment from that other devices that attach to that wireless access point. And bully is the tool. It's called the pixie dust attack by that bully attack method there. Okay. Now let me check this. I think this is also I believe it's a 10 question deal here. I'm going to leave that open because we got labs we're going to do here in a little while. Now, you folks that may be listening in on YouTube, in just a little while here, we are going to be breaking away from the YouTube broadcast because my class is going to be doing some inline lab exercises, which you guys will not be able to participate in. So that will end the broadcast for this afternoon. It's going to be a little while there, so hang with us right now. Let me see here. This lesson review is, yep, 10 questions. I tell you, we're gonna hold on to that, and we'll do it as the in the when wrapping up the entire module on the module quiz here later on. So we're not going to break away and do that quiz right now. Now, I've mentioned the terminology several times already, social engineering. Social engineering is also very often referred to as hacking the human because of the fact that the human being is the largest target inside any enterprise environment, and because they are the most susceptible to being hacked and attacked. There's a whole range of different types of social engineering attacks. And as penetration testers, we should be very aware of all of those. There are social engineering attacks that target individual users, groups of users. There is, for instance, from a physical plant perspective, there's tailgating, there's piggybacking. That's where I gain physical access into an environment by tailgating is when I follow somebody through a controlled access point without their knowledge. And piggybacking is when I convince them, oh geez, I forgot my badge. And the company I used to work for, we didn't have the security check-in with the badges here. If you'll let me slip in here, and I swear I won't tell anybody, and I will not forget my badge tomorrow. That's a social engineering technique that actually tried to take advantage of several different things, compassion being one of the largest ones there, forgetfulness, self-deprecation there. And it works. I mean, it works so many times. There's also these phishing types of attacks, phishing with a PH. Those are typically implemented by way of spam email. I must have thrown away 35, 40 spam emails this morning when I was cleaning out my email box. The phishing campaigns are basically just that. They're phishing for information. They're trying to trick people into acting in ways that they normally wouldn't act, or into divulging information they normally wouldn't divulge. And that's techniques, TTPs, we call it, tactics, techniques, and procedures that we utilize as penetration testers, trying to fool people into giving up information. Phishing is typically the spam email. There's versions of that called spear phishing, targeting specific individuals, whaling, going after the big fish. Smishing is a version of it that we use SMS text messaging to do. Vishing is another version of it. We use voice over IP or video calls to do it. And all of those are designed, like I say, to hack the human, to trick them into giving up information. There are versions of some of those types of attacks too, social engineering attacks. One specific one called a watering hole. So I identify, for instance, typically a website that is known to be visited by a certain ilk of people. I don't know, small boat sailing enthusiasts is just an example. So I'll target those websites, see if where the vulnerabilities are in the website, see if I can't sneak perhaps some script code and embed it in that website. So then I know all of these probably wealthy sailboat owner people that visit that site regularly. When they visit, they get downloaded my script language. It may even redirect them to an alternate site to validate their credentials. Okay. That's a watering hole type of attack. I always think about it. You guys probably remember years ago, there was a TV commercial. I don't know what the product or service was, but it was this nice, surreal sounding music, and the camera's panning in slowly on this oasis type of watering hole in the Serengeti somewhere. And the nice commentator with the lovely British or Australian accent was talking about, oh, the beautiful little baby animals here, is look at them sipping here, and mom is overseeing this, and you got all these different types of baby mom and baby animals there. Then all of a sudden, this massive crocodile comes lunging out of the lake and grabs one of the cubs, and then makes his, goes off with the meal. That's a watering hole kind of attack. You lure them into the particular environment that they're used to visiting, and then launch the attack by several different means. And those attacks, the fishing, whaling, smishing, fishing, farming types of attacks, are there to harvest credentials. They call them farming attacks sometimes, especially if they're targeting DNS servers, farming for information, trying to gather as much credential information as they possibly can by multiple means: user IDs, passcodes, PIN codes, and so on. Social engineering also utilizes several different methods there in order to fool people, to trick people out of information. Let me give an example of a very typical social engineering technique. And it uses urgency, it uses politeness, it uses reference to known entities, things like that. So telephone rings in an organization, and I've set this up right along these lines, by the way, successfully in some pen tests in the past. The chief financial officer on the other end picks up the phone. Oh boy, on the other end, Dave. Miss Wilson, this is Dave down in tech support. We have a problem here, and I wanted to alert you all up on 38 there of it right now. James told me to give you all a call up there and see if I couldn't lock down your systems immediately. We got some malicious traffic going in our network right now. As I'm speaking to you, we're seeing some targeted attacks on the systems up there on the 38th floor. I need to patch your system, Ms. Wilson, then I got to patch Mr. Cagle's and Ms. Higginbotham's. I know this is unorthodox. James told me to give you a call and said we needed to handle it quickly because this may very well be urgent. I need to get your user ID and password so I can log into your system, put the patch on your system. And then, like I say, I've got to do Ms. Cagle's and Mr. Higginbotham's right after you up there on 38. Ms. Wilson, I know it's unorthodox, but we are in an emergency situation. Can you help me out and save me a very long trip up to the 38th floor there? Well, Ms. Wilson, CFO of the company, even though she has been told a gazillion times in probably a gazillion different ways, you never, ever, under any circumstances, divulge that type of information over the telephone, over a text message, or over an email. Well, old Dave used all the right things. He used that urgency. He appealed to her for her assistance. He made reference to people that she knows on the same floor. He knew that she worked on the 38th floor. He made reference to James. She knows James. He's the director of tech. So he did all the right things. And just about every situation, old Dave, who his name's not even Dave, we know that, he just ended up with the user ID and password of the chief financial officer of the company. Just imagine the type of access and permissions that would give you to probably some very, very secure information there in the environment. But that's the way social engineering works. It uses all of those things. And as penetration testers, we need to understand how to use all of those aspects of that type of social engineering as well. Okay. Now you think, well, how does he know her? How does he know the other people? That's all information that's printed on the company directory in the lobby of the building, you see. So that's that research that you do in order to gather that very convincing sound of the pretexting that he does to deliver that message there, you see. So it's very convincing. They use that urgency, that pretexting, information that this person is aware of, making references that this person is aware of there. Okay. And then one of the major things that that accomplishes, hoaxes. The man, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This is real kind of thing. Now, one of the lab exercises here that's available in this particular section is actually utilizing this suite of tools called the CET, the Social Engineering Toolkit. It's a menu-driven type of toolkit that can assist in setting up and then implementing and carrying through with certain types of social engineering attacks here. Now, we looked at Maltego, and I told you about the harvester, the HT tracker, those kind of tools that we use to gather information, to pull information, code from websites. The harvester is a tool suite that allows me to farm for information in essence. Gather information about names, addresses, telephone numbers, contact information off of websites, things like that. I gave you guys the link to the Maltego tool suite. Maltego is a great little package that allows me to pull together tertiary sites and tertiary contacts that may be associated with your main target. And I can put together a very graphic oriented view of what my overall attack surface may look like when I start putting together my attack methodology for a pen test. Okay. Evilgenics, another one. GoFish, another one. Recon NG is a tool suite that is specifically oriented towards social engineering as it relates to setting up attacks on enterprise size networks. Okay, same kind of thing and some of the same kind of tool suites, and very closely aligned, by the way, with the Aircrack NG product line as well. This is a framework here, the Beef framework. I'm gonna give you guys a link to that, mainly because I like their mascot. It is a framework that is oriented towards hacking browsers specifically. Open source, open source tools here. Oh, that's not it. That's the beef industry. Don't want that. There we go. Browser exploitation framework project. And like I say, I just what are we doing? Yeah, they're not showing their mascot anymore. I hate that. The mascot's a longhorn beef, longhorn a steer. And they used to have it right on top of the front of the very first web page. I see they've redesigned their web page there. This is completely open source stuff. Yeah, they don't have the cool looking mascot anymore. I hate that. Oh well. Let me mark the new page here. But that is a complete exploitation framework that is targeted specifically toward vulnerabilities and weaknesses in most of your browser systems there, the web browsers there. But and those things are oriented towards the functionality and the TTPs that I would use in targeting sites based upon that you know the overall social engineering environment there, using all of the social engineering aspects there. That's what I was talking about with the phishing, smishing, vishing, spear phishing, whaling. The whaling is a concept of typically you spam the upper level, directorate, C-suite employed boards of directors of an organization, or individuals that are just known to be very wealthy. That's the whaling there. And then the spear phishing version of that is where, like I was talking about, you target a specific group of people, also oftentimes known to be very powerful or very wealthy, one or the other. There are additional steps that I utilize. I talked about the tailgating and piggybacking, gaining physical access. But this thing, dumpster diving, pretty fascinating to me. For several years, there was this roving reporter here in the greater Atlanta area on, I don't remember which TV station. He's left the area now, but he was doing, over a period of about, I don't know, 8 months to a year or so, he did a half dozen or more security oriented specials that he did, reporting that he did special. And one thing that he did, he literally went dumpster diving in the back of, well, he was going to like drugstores, nursing homes, hospitals, these little McDoctors we see, the little emergency room in the strip malls, things like that. And he came out of the what he produced in that particular report. He came with this mountain. I'm talking a mountain of printed documentation that by federal law should have been shredded and incinerated. He came out with mountains of that acronym data that we spoke about at the beginning of the week, the personally identifiable information, the professional health information, the personal medical information, the protected credit information, mountains of it in printed format. There were several large medical and insurance oriented organizations housed in the southeastern United States, and many of them here in the greater Atlanta area, were fined millions of dollars as a result of this guy's reporting. That may have been why he disappeared from the Atlanta broadcasting arena. But and it was through this dumpster diving that he did, and he found that stuff blatantly just thrown away in the dumpsters behind the organization. That is a social engineering technique. Okay, and you can find out massive amounts of information by the stuff that people throw away. Give another example too. And I actually called this out. I was doing a security evaluation of a large company in downtown Atlanta. And we looked in some of the trash that was being thrown away. And this particular company had a requirement that everybody in the organization had to change their passwords. And I believe it was every 45 days. Okay. Which, in my opinion, is just too often. I mean, you can control it and manage it better than that. Well, what was happening was there was a bunch of the, shall we say, the executive assistants. You don't call them secretaries anymore. They were executive assistants. The day that they had to change their password, what would they do? They would write the new password on their calendars, on their desk calendars, or on the calendars they had hanging on the wall. New password. Okay. So if you found that calendar when they threw it away at the end of the year, you would see the pattern developed. We'll just say password 123, password 456, password 7, and that was the pattern that developed. That was very, very apparent when you looked at the written areas that they put on their calendars when they had to change their passwords. So again, dumpster diving, figuring out that information. Another thing we've seen, we looked at the impersonation in the example I gave you. Old Dave was impersonating a tech support rep. Okay. Shoulder surfing and eavesdropping. We are even now seeing the utilization of drones, UAVs, that are hovering outside office buildings, looking in the window and seeing people, like, for instance, keying PIN codes into the PIN code reader to get into the network ops center, things like that, or literally looking over people's shoulders while they are keying in user IDs, passwords, PIN codes, etc. We've seen situations, and I've tried to do this. I wasn't successful with it, but I tried when we were doing a pen test, sit in the lobby of one of our clients, and I was using my mobile phone just sitting in front of me, watching people that were getting onto the elevator that only went up to the top two floors, the executive level floors. they had to key in a PIN code just to get on the elevator. I tried my best to take video of it, and the phones back then just weren't a good enough quality because I was shooting it across a lobby. Now, with the quality of the optics that we have on our new mobile phones, you can pick up that kind of information. So that shoulder surfing, eavesdropping kind of thing there is much easier to do. Here's the watering hole thing I was talking about. You find some way to inject some malicious code into a particular website, and it's a website that I will identify by those wealthy yachters, people that belong to this yacht club or that yacht club. Okay, find the vulnerabilities in the website, inject my malicious code, usually through a script tag that I gave you the example of earlier in the week. And then everybody else that visits it, well, they get that malicious payload downloaded into their systems, which gives me sort of that inside access to all their data, you see. So, or maybe I redirect them to another site again to validate their credentials. Or maybe I download some script code on their system that sets up that reverse listener program that allows me to log into their device from a remote location, take control of it, you see. So whatever the malicious code that I plant on their systems, and by whatever means, it gives me that unauthorized access, you see. Here is the social engineering toolkit, SET. I'll give you a link to this as well. Now, like I said, you guys have a lab exercise that you'll be doing here using the SET. Um, but there's the GitHub site that has all of the source code for it. But what I wanted to show you, is this the right one? That's not it. Maybe this is the one. Let me look at this right quick and I'll let you know. Okay, of course. They don't like that. Don't know why. Not sure if I've seen some of this guy's videos before. I don't know if this is the one that I want to share with you. We shall see. Nope, this is not the guy. Okay, I've got one. I'll see if I can. I have socked it away, the YouTube video, and it's the same guy that I gave a link to earlier. That's got the. I don't know if he's a Kiwi or an Australian, but got a lovely accent, and he's very very sharp on his stuff. Um, this is good documentation on SET, and again, just keep this in your toolbox for reference later on. You're not going to be asked any detail level questions anyway on your certification exam about SET, but it is something that if I were you and wanted to expand my horizons here, I would most certainly learn how to use this. And again, your lab steps you through using it quite a bit. The social engineering, I mean, it gets into things like setting up a spam email campaign for phishing for information. It even uses some command injection techniques. There's an item on the menu that will allow you to do that as well. Now, in addition to your regular old everyday network systems, I have mentioned a couple of times along the way as well some of these specialized type of systems, your operational technologies, your industrial control systems, things like that. The mesh control networks, the voice control networks that we have in our homes and things like that. Many of these OT, especially type of systems, operational technologies and ICS, industrial control systems, are very small, very specific component type of computer systems. And again, think about things like your solar farms, wind farms, hydroelectric dams, even medical installations where they have dozens and dozens of these little very specific OT type of functional types of appliances, many of which especially in like hospitals and things like that. Now, those things are all operating with a combination of either near field communications, and that's the real close proximity stuff, swiping badges to get into areas, or Bluetooth technologies or Wi-Fi technologies. Okay. Now, the majority of the ones that we see now implemented inside medical institutions, they're not using the 2.4 gigahertz because they have found that it may interfere with some other medical testing equipment. But so they're using the 5 and the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. But there's a lot of them that communicate with all of those individual testing devices. And, I mean, I know every time I go in for my annual cardio, they come rolling in this complete wireless system, plug it up and do all the things plugging all over my chest, doing the EKG exams and then a couple of other devices that they roll in on different carts and check blood gases and blood pressure and things like that. And all of them are communicating wirelessly with their wireless networks. Now, I talked about a couple of the attacks oriented specifically towards Bluetooth, the 2.4 gigahertz Bluetooth. There's two specifically that if I were you, I would read up on them. Blue jacking is the one that, like I was saying, most people think that's where you are taking over a Bluetooth device. Blue jacking is where I'm just inundating that device with all of these pairing and communication requests. Blue snarfing is the one that's utilized where I actually take control of that device and then have access to everything that it is communicating with or controlling. There is a very broad spread, it's like a botnet attack. It's called the Blueborn virus. Give you guys a link to that. This thing, there are no telling how many millions of devices all over the world that are infected with this Blueborn virus. There you go. Where's the link that I want to? There it is right now. And I mean, talking about there are billions of devices all over the planet, Bluetooth devices that have been affected by this, in essence, turning them into this massive size botnet. All these devices are infected with the Blueborn worm, actually, is what it is, or virus that is drilled down into those systems. And they've got multiple what they call bot masters all over the planet that can then issue commands to these devices. Now, I will tell you that lots of the operating systems, the iOS, the several different vendors of Android appliances, have cleansed this thing with some of their relatively recent operating system updates. Because I mean, this thing was so widespread for several years. And it gave the bot masters as well the ability of having certain applications running on those devices, dynamically feeding information to the outside of the device. And it was using the cellular and the Bluetooth technologies for that connectivity. Okay. There are several different types of very specialized system or attacks on specialized systems. And it falls in the entire range of your operational technologies, industrial control systems, and it utilizes the entire gamut of wireless technologies. Near field communications, the RFID, both of which are relatively close proximity. Near field communications, about 9-10 centimeters. That's your tap to pay or your close proximity sharing of files and stuff. Then there's RFID, which is your integrated circuitry chips. That was first implemented in the retail world by Walmart when they started tagging all their appliances. Okay. Then you have Bluetooth, which again, primary Bluetooth proximity is about 30 feet, about 10 meters, unless they're using the now licensed, in some cases outlawed, class 1 Bluetooth, which is about 100 meters. And all of these things now are being compounded, of course, by artificial intelligence. These programs that are designed to run on these massive servers that are constantly trying to create these new, in essence, botnets, these large collections of all these different devices that have been infected with some type of malware. And the artificial intelligence will periodically try to do a mass communication with these devices using a whole host of communications methods. Cellular networks, of course, Wi-Fi networks, of course, and then some even your radio frequency, your RFID stuff. And again, attaching these devices, pulling information from those devices. That's why I try my best to make certain that all my family, friends, and other assorted misfits understand the challenges of, for instance, using your phone to shop your Amazon and to pay your bills and do credit card purchases and things like that, which you can secure them, but you have to make sure that you do. I'm a big fan of using virtual private network clients to protect against that. But the majority of the populace doesn't, which is just I call it gravy on the taters for we penetration testers, because there are literally billions of systems out there that have little to no security and protection on those things. Here's some a couple of these we've already talked about. A couple of the tool suites here that are available out there for setting up and carrying out these attacks on these specialized systems. We looked at SCAPI. We've already talked about Wireshark and TCP dump. There is a whole framework of attack tools, this mobile security framework. Let me give you a link to that as well. Now, I want to make sure everybody understand all these links I'm giving you. More than likely, you're going to get no detailed questions about these at all on your exam. But I most certainly want you to understand where the weaknesses are in the mobile systems, where what type of attack tools and attack methodology are used for cracking into these things. Okay. So it's again, just more tools in your toolbox. Drozier and Frida are other attack framework oriented suites that are designed specifically, to targeting mobile types of appliances. There's a Android Debug Bridge, ADB. That, of course, is for Android appliances only. There's a couple of tool suites out there that are targeted towards the iOS environment, Apple phone and Apple the iPad device. Blue Strike is one very specifically oriented, of course, towards your Bluetooth communication protocols there as well. I'll tell you one thing I've seen, and boy, I beg for this when we go in and start doing pen testing on, especially on companies that are allowing this bring your own device deployment model. A lot of people will, in the Apple devices, they call it jailbreaking. In the Android devices, they call it rooting. Either way, what they're doing is basically unlocking those mobile phones and tablet type of devices. And they say they do it so that they can sideload applications on these devices without having to go through the official app store. What they don't realize, and what is just, again, more gravy on the taters for us penetration testers, is that by rooting or jailbreaking these appliances, they are moving the operating system level of security that's baked right into the software on those devices. I'm talking about down at the EEPROM level software. So it's sort of opening the device up. It makes that device susceptible to what in many years ago we used to call it cloning, be able to clone the device and use somebody else's account, same sort of thing. But it also gives me the ability as a hacker and attacker to use tool suites like the blue snarfing and the blue jacking to inundate those systems with messaging, Bluetooth messages attached to those systems and completely control the device. Okay. I beg for those things. Now, as a security practitioner and guarding against those, if I'm going to be allowing my users to bring their own devices to the party, well, I want them using virtual private network clients. If they go to log into my mobile systems in my network, I'll be managing that with some type of mobile device management or mobile application management, enterprise mobility management software suites. And if I look into that device and realize that it's been rooted or jailbroken, hey, they don't get to log into my system, you see. But again, as pen testers, I beg for those kind of configurations there because it lays bare the system right down to the operating system level I'm talking about, to all types of abuse and attacks and control, absolute control at the I'm talking about at the firmware level of the device. Okay, so yeah, I want them jailbreaking. I can use many different artificial intelligence methods out there in order to infect systems, to inject code into systems. Now, AI is not any more capable than a human being or programmer, except for the fact that it can launch these attacks millions and millions of times faster than a human being can. The AI systems, they just run code, you know. Now they do have almost unlimited access to data input resources, which makes them, seem like they are this living, thinking thing. But just that, that resource here just makes them speedier. The resources that they have, they access to, this massive amount, basically the Library of Congress data input allows them to make much more efficient, quicker decisions than we mere human beings can do so. But they got to be programmed and taught how to do that. But I can have an AI system that is set up to evaluate the device, see if it's been rooted or jailbroken, see where the vulnerabilities are, and inject code just like that. I mean, within nanoseconds, it would take us human critters to do that stuff manually. Okay, so again, AI is not it's not Skynet yet, but it just operates. It's like a hive computing, a collection of a gazillion hive brains all working simultaneously on the same problem. So it's just billions of times faster than we humans. That's it. OT, operational technologies. There's a lot of the systems that are incorporated in these OT networks that are very specialized purpose kind of things. Some examples of OT type networks. The last two down here, CAN and Modbus. Those are the bus main computing component of automobiles. Of all of your, automobiles that were manufactured after about the year 2002, every one of those things is an electronic controlled vehicle. And in most of your modern automobiles, there are a dozen or more little tiny small connection boards that all communicate up with a CAN bus or a Modbus main controller. Okay, those things are vulnerable to digital injection. Those things are vulnerable to being even over the airways, over cellular networks being canceled. I don't know if you guys heard about what was it in was it Japan, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or so ago. There was something like 12, 13,000 Porsche automobiles just all of a sudden stopped working, just died right on the road. And it was a glitch in the software, or they're not going to admit it, but those cars got hacked is what it was. That's all there is to it. And it was attacking them in those situations, the Modbus controllers inside those devices, which shut them down, you know. And lots of other types of devices, planes, trains, and automobiles are using those same types of operational technology components for their full control. And think about too things like manufacturing, distribution, shop floors, especially those that use a lot of robotics and servo mechanisms for manufacturing type of functions. All of those things are controlled by a management console of some sort, and they're very specialized in what they do. Those are oftentimes referred to as ICS, industrial control systems, and one such of those is called the controlling component of anyway called SCADA. supervisory control and data acquisition systems. It's where it communicates with all of these OT devices that may be spread out over this large, vast network, and it captures all the information from all those and rolls it up to the a management console, to where the information there is captured in a singular dashboard type of view and then managed accordingly there. But so these are just different flavors of operational technology type of networks there. The systems that actually gather the status information from, sometimes thousands of components that may be spread out over a vast, vast distance there. And some of these OT type of networks too, even though they do belong to a digital network, well, many of the individual systems that the OT devices are set to control are analog oriented types of appliances. So they don't receive their programming from a digital computer device. Their programming is controlled by some type of very specific analog. They call it what is it? PLCs, program logical controllers. And if you want to make program changes on those things, more often than not, you have to do it manually, flipping switches, setting dip switches, things like that, just because of the nature of the beast. So then there is a analog to digital conversion of more often than not just status information that is then shipped up line to some type of management console dashboard, basically to receive the state of the systems. Are they working? Are they not? What's the problem with it? But if any program changes are being made, there's a very specific programming language called ladder logic that you have to go on site, open up the case, and then make the physical ladder logic control changes to reprogram it in essence. Pen testers die for that kind of stuff because interrupting the whole flow is just a matter of gaining physical access, open the console, flip, 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 then the program is all screwed up. Okay. So I can bring entire systems offline by doing that type of hacking and attacking there as well. Okay. Now, here's a couple of the other wireless frequencies that I was talking about, frequency ranges I was talking about. The RFID, radio frequency identification there. Short range, relatively short range. Usually those things are no more than about same thing as Bluetooth, no more than about 28 and a half feet, 30 feet, 10 meters, that kind of thing. Near field communications, very close, about 9-10 centimeters. Very short distances. And even in some of the NFC, if they have boosters, I've seen that like on shop floors, but still it is, it's 25, 30 feet, much the same as RFID. But those are some of the wireless communications that are being utilized in all kinds of environments. Badges, swipe badges, RFID tags put in clothing that sounds the alarm when they walk out of Walmart, try to steal something, that kind of thing. Those are all over the airwaves kind of technologies that can be intercepted and cloned and jammed and things like that. Bluetooth, like I say, it's actually 28 and a half feet, 10 meters is about the effective range on the Bluetooth appliances there. Blue jacking is what I'm saying. You insert or try to insert or inundate a Bluetooth device with these unwanted messages, videos, text messages, audio blast, link request, that kind of thing. And it's sort of overwhelming in some cases to the device. And especially, as I was saying earlier, if the users have those appliances set up in the auto pairing mode, well, that gives me the ability of snarfing, they call it blue snarfing that device, taking control of it, having access to everything that device is communicating with. And if it happens to be the mobile phone that I have just blue snarfed, whatever's riding along on that mobile phone is available there to be tracked on my device there as well. About 30 feet is what you get on that. For the longest time, there is another version of Bluetooth. It's a Bluetooth class 1. It's about 100 meters. First time I ever encountered it, the wife and I were driving down the interstate, and all of a sudden I see these messages that are popping up on my phone, and it was advertising things that were off the exits that we were approaching. Did a little research, and they had these Bluetooth blaster devices sitting off the road on the interstate in the signs, the billboards. Bluetooth devices sitting there, and they had like 100-meter range on these things. So it was blasting everybody that was driving by. And the first one I got, it was something like, pull off on exit 118 and get 2-for-1 burger with this message, kind of thing. Going, holy mackerel! Now they have in many cases legislated that out of utilization, or at the very least regulated it so that they just can't be blasting you with those kind of things anymore. Certain things we do from a penetration tester perspective on these specialized types of devices. Main thing is we have to do background and research so that we have a full understanding of the system. What can it do? What systems is it attached to on the backside? Does it have data stores associated with it? What type of OT or ICS or SCADA system is it? What are the controlling components? What does this device control on the backside? And there are very, very specialized toolkits that are available out there for trying to hack, attack, and do any kind of pen testing functions on these very specialized OT devices. But they're out there, and there's a bunch of them that are available from open source perspective. Now you got to be very, very cautious with in doing pen testing in this arena right here. Okay. Because some of these systems, especially the high level operational technology systems, things like, citywide CCTV systems, citywide traffic control systems. Boy, you are kicking a hornet's nest big time if you start trying to hack into those things. That is, in many cases, violation of federal law. Okay. So you got to be very, very cautious and understand the rules that dictate how those things may or may not even be looked at. I'm talking about. So all of that has to be clearly defined in your rules of engagement documentation. You got to make certain that any of those systems do indeed fall within the scope of the engagement itself. You do not want to stumble into an environment when you're doing the pen testing to where you are in violation of regional, state, federal, or international law. Okay, so just proceed with caution on those specialized types of systems there. Okay? So that's what the module is all about. Here we wanted to give you a good idea of the limits that are placed on specific wireless networks, the tool suites that we utilize to try to to plan and then mount attacks on those things. Wanted to give you a little bit more in-depth understanding of the whole TTP's environment for your social engineering, hacking the human. That should be a large upfront type of approach when you're planning any kind of penetration test. And never ever forget, the human being is the largest target because they are the most susceptible target. When you're planning your pen test, you have to approach that very carefully. I gave you guys the example on Tuesday of when we're planning a pen test on a large company, again, downtown Atlanta. And we decided to just attend their every other Wednesday belly up to the bar gathering with the IT group and, just, be friendly and stripe up conversation with some of them and try to glean as much information as we could just in general conversation about the environment, about the systems, about their job, and so on. You just gotta be. It's a cautionary tale because you always have to consider ethics and the ethical boundaries when you're doing those kind of things. And if you have any question at all when you're doing the planning phase of the ethical boundaries, well, talk with your supervisor, talk with whomever you report to in your organization and get their take on it. Okay. I've been in situations to where I towed right up to the ethical line, but you don't want to cross over those ethical boundaries there at all. Okay. All right, friends and neighbors that have joined us on YouTube, I'm going to cut you all loose for the day. Thank you all so very much for joining us. If you need any more information about our services here at CED, feel free to contact our sales representatives, and hope to see you guys in one of our classes here upcoming pretty quick there. Okay, so thank you for joining us, and